The tale of Toa, known as the Spirit Stone, is more than just an old legend. It is a sacred narrative that has been woven into the very fabric of the Naga people's culture. This ancient stone, believed to hold immense blessings, was not merely an object, but a spiritual relic passed down through the ages, revered by those who understood its significance. The Spirit Stone was said to have the power to grant abundance, fertility, and prosperity to those who honored it properly. For the Naga people, whose lives were closely tied to the land, such a stone was considered a divine gift. Long ago, in a time before recorded history, a man named Ksa and his wife Kola set out on a life-changing journey. Their origin lay in the vast, harsh lands of the Mongolian steppes, where nomadic life demanded strength, resilience, and faith. With 3 young sons, Chakhesang, Angami, and Sui, they embarked on a difficult migration, bringing with them not just their children, but a modest herd of domestic animals that represented their livelihood. Their migration, like so many before them, was motivated by the search for a new home, one where they could build a future, unencumbered by the harshness of their homeland. The path they traveled was treacherous, leading them through dense forests, where the canopy of trees blocked out much of the sunlight, casting eerie shadows on their way. They crossed rivers whose currents threatened to sweep them away, testing their endurance at every turn. Despite the difficulties, they pressed on, driven by faith that a better life awaited them. Each night, as they gathered around their small campfire, Ksa would tell his sons stories of the Creator's blessings, assuring them that their journey had a purpose. These stories kept their spirits high as they continued toward their destination, Sauba, a place rumored to be rich with the Creator's favor. After many days of travel, they arrived at a small village called Mikel. The village was a tranquil place, nestled in a valley surrounded by towering mountains. It was here that the family decided to rest, both physically and spiritually. Ksa, who was a deeply spiritual man, led his family in prayer. They knelt on the ground, facing the sky, as Ksa prayed fervently to the Creator for guidance, asking for a sign that would direct their steps. In the stillness that followed the prayer, something strange happened. Ksa, feeling an intuitive pull, took his walking stick, a simple piece of wood that had supported him through their long journey, and planted it firmly in the ground. What happened next left the family in awe. The stick did not remain upright, as expected. Instead, it leaned toward the east, specifically in the direction of a place called Keiko. The wind, which had been still moments before, began to blow gently but insistently in the same direction. It was as if nature itself was pointing the way forward. Curious and cautious, Kola, Ksa's wife, reached out to pull the stick from the earth. But to her surprise, the stick had taken root, transforming before her eyes into a wild pear tree, its branches stretching skyward as if blessed by divine hands. At that very moment, a swallow appeared, circling the tree before flying off toward Keiko. The family, seeing this series of signs, believed that the Creator was guiding them, and they decided to follow the swallow on its flight. Their journey continued, now filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The swallow, always just ahead of them, led them through the landscape with an almost otherworldly precision. The family trusted the bird, feeling that it was more than just an ordinary creature. It was a messenger, sent to show them their new home. Day after day, they followed the bird, crossing more rivers and climbing more hills, until at last, they arrived at a mist-shrouded valley. In the center of this valley stood a great stone Zoitoa, the Spirit Stone. The valley where the Spirit Stone stood was unlike any place they had encountered before. Thick mists curled around the stone, creating an aura of mystery that both intrigued and unsettled them. The air here felt different, heavier, almost sacred, and the silence that blanketed the valley was profound, broken only by the occasional chirp of the swallow as it hovered above the stone. As the family stood before the massive rock, they couldn't help but feel that they had arrived at a place of immense significance. Ksa, his heart filled with reverence, approached the stone with slow, deliberate steps. As he drew near, something caught his eye. A small frog had appeared on the stone's surface, holding a stalk of paddy in its mouth. To Ksa, this was not a mere coincidence. Frogs were often seen as messengers in Naga mythology, particularly in matters of fertility and agriculture. The paddy stalk in the frog's mouth seemed to confirm what Kza had believed from the start. The spirit stone was a source of divine blessing, a place where their new life could flourish. Carefully, Kza removed the stalk from the frog's mouth and placed it gently on the surface of the stone. He stepped back, expecting nothing more than a symbolic gesture, but what happened next left the family in awe. Before their eyes, the single stalk of paddy doubled in size, growing fuller and more vibrant as if nourished by an unseen force. The family stared in disbelief, but the meaning was clear. The spirit stone had the power to bless and multiply whatever was placed upon it. From that day forward, the stone became central to their lives. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, Xazi Kola and their sons would place their harvested paddy on the stone, knowing that by afternoon it would be doubled. The spirit stone's blessings were not limited to crops either. On some occasions, Kza would lay small trinkets or fruits upon the stone, and each time, the items would multiply. Word of the spirit stone's powers spread quickly among the nearby villages, drawing the curious and the faithful alike. Some came to witness its power, others came to seek blessings of their own. The village of Keiko soon became a place of pilgrimage. People would bring offerings to the spirit stone, hoping for a share of its blessings. The once quiet valley transformed into a bustling hub of activity, as pilgrims, traders, and farmers came from all directions to visit the stone. For Kza and his family, this influx of visitors brought both prosperity and challenges. Though they now had plenty, the responsibility of guarding and managing the stone's powers weighed heavily on them. Kza's three sons, Chakhesang, Angami, and Sui, grew up knowing that the spirit stone was the key to their family's fortune. As the years passed, each son developed his own relationship with the stone. Chakhesang, the eldest, saw it as his birthright, believing that he should one day inherit control over it. Angami, the middle son, took a more pragmatic view, seeing the stone as a tool for the family's survival. Sui, the youngest, regarded the stone with awe and reverence, feeling a deep spiritual connection to its power. At first, the brothers worked together in harmony. They took turns drying their paddy on the stone, each brother sharing in the stone's blessings. But as time went on, jealousy began to creep into their hearts. Chakhesang and Angami, both keen on asserting their dominance, started to vie for more control over the stone. Sui, being the youngest, often found himself excluded from their plans. What had once been a symbol of unity for the family was now becoming a source of tension. With time, the subtle tension between the brothers turned into open rivalry. Chakhesang, as the eldest, believed it was his right to have the most time with the spirit stone, to benefit from its miraculous powers. Angami, though younger than Chakhesang, wasn't content to simply take a secondary role. He wanted equal control over the stone, believing that his practical skills made him more deserving of its blessings. Sui, the youngest, was often left out of the equation entirely. His respect for the stone and its sacred power made him less aggressive than his brothers, but this very humility also made him an easy target for exclusion. The once harmonious rhythm of their lives began to break down as jealousy and greed took root. Chakhesang and Angami, in their quest to outdo one another, started monopolizing the stone, carefully timing their visits to make sure Sui was left with nothing. Day after day, Sui would arrive at the stone only to find it already being used by his older brothers. At first, he kept silent, hoping they would eventually make space for him. But they never did. Resentment grew within him, not because he desired material gain, but because the stone represented something much deeper, a connection to the Creator, a bond with the land, and the legacy of his father. Kza, their mother, now elderly and frail, watched in sorrow as her son's bond fractured before her eyes. She had once taken pride in their unity, their shared sense of purpose, but now she feared that the spirit stone's blessings had become a curse. The daily arguments between Chakhesang and Angami grew louder and more violent, while Sui's quiet exclusion from their squabbles left him increasingly isolated. The mother knew that if this continued, the stone's power could destroy the family, and possibly even lead to bloodshed. In the Naga culture, the idea of family and community was paramount, and the loss of unity among siblings was seen as a deep spiritual failing. The mother, haunted by this reality, wrestled with what to do. She feared that after her death, the brothers' rivalry would only intensify, and the sacred power of the Spirit Stone could be used as a weapon in their battle for dominance. In her heart, she knew that something drastic had to be done to prevent further destruction. One night, after a particularly bitter argument between her two elder sons, the old mother made a painful decision. She would destroy the Spirit Stone, the very thing that had both blessed and cursed her family. It was not an easy choice. She knew that breaking the stone would mean breaking the connection to the Creator's blessings. But she also believed it was the only way to save her sons from tearing each other apart. As she lay in bed, she thought back to the day when Xa had first planted his walking stick in the ground, and how the Spirit Stone had become a beacon of hope for their family. Now, that hope had turned into something dangerous, something that could not be allowed to continue. The next day, when the sun was at its highest, the old mother gathered a pile of dry leaves and carefully placed them beneath the Spirit Stone. Her hands trembled as she lit the leaves on fire, watching the flames grow and consume the dry branches. As the heat intensified, the stone began to crack. The loud, sharp sound of the stone breaking echoed through the valley, drawing the attention of her sons. Chakhesang, Angami, and Sui rushed to the scene, arriving just in time to see the Spirit Stone split into several large pieces. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. From the broken fragments of the stone, a dove-like figure rose into the sky, its wings shimmering in the sunlight as it ascended toward the heavens. The family stood in stunned silence, watching the ethereal bird disappear into the distance. It was a symbol, a message from the Creator that the blessings of the Spirit Stone had come to an end. The stone, once whole and powerful, had lost its magic, but the signs didn't stop there. As the flames died down, a rooster emerged from the remnants of the fire. It stood among the shattered pieces of the stone, its feathers gleaming as it let out a single, piercing crow. The old mother, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done, turned to Sui, her youngest and most spiritually attuned son. She urged him to follow the rooster, telling him that it was a sign of blessing meant for him. With tears in his eyes, Sui understood that his journey was only just beginning. With the Spirit Stone destroyed, the family's connection to its magical powers was severed, but the lessons of the stone endured. Sui, heeding his mother's advice, left Keiko to follow the rooster, which led him on a long and winding path. According to the elders of Keiko, this journey marked the beginning of Sui's migration from Chakhesang. His travels took him far from his brothers and the place where their family had once been united, but the spirit of the stone remained with him, even in fragments. As he ventured into new lands, Sui carried with him pieces of the shattered stone, believing that even though its original blessing was gone, it still held traces of power. These remnants were passed down through generations, becoming treasured heirlooms among his descendants. Over time, the people who followed Sui would spread to different regions, carrying with them the story of the Spirit Stone and its magic. Some of these fragments were taken to the Angami, Chakhesang, and Sumi areas, where they were kept as symbols of divine connection. The migration of Sui's people marked a significant chapter in the history of the Naga tribes. Though not all Naga tribes share the same origin story, many believe that their ancestors came from Keiko, where the Spirit Stone once stood. The belief in the stone's power, even in its shattered form, became a part of their cultural heritage, passed down through oral tradition. The Spirit Stone, though no longer whole, continued to influence the spiritual life of the people who revered it. For the people of Keiko and beyond, the legend of the Spirit Stone became more than just a story about a magical rock. It was a lesson about the dangers of greed, the fragility of family bonds, and the importance of spiritual connection. The stone, which had once provided abundance and prosperity, had also brought division and conflict. Its destruction, while painful, was a necessary act to restore balance and prevent further harm. As Sui embarked on his journey following the rooster, he carried the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders. He ventured through dense forests, over rocky mountains, and across wide rivers, always keeping the rooster in his sight. The rooster, though ordinary in appearance, seemed to move with purpose, leading him toward an unknown future. For Sui, this journey was not just a physical one but a spiritual quest. He knew that by leaving Keiko, he was distancing himself from the conflicts that had torn his family apart, but he was also following a divine path, one that his mother had urged him to take. Throughout his journey, Sui encountered various tribes and communities. Each time he passed through a new region, he would share the story of the Spirit Stone with those he met. The tale of the stone's blessings, and its eventual destruction, captivated listeners, and many came to view Sui as a wise man, a keeper of ancient knowledge. He was often asked to share his wisdom, to explain the significance of the rooster that continued to guide him, and to tell of the spiritual powers that had once resided in the stone. His story spread, and with it, so did the legend of the Spirit Stone. As Sui's people settled in new lands, fragments of the broken stone became revered relics, believed to hold traces of the power that had once blessed Keiko. Though the original blessing had been lost, these fragments were kept as sacred objects, passed down through generations. In some regions, these pieces were used in religious ceremonies, while in others, they were buried under the foundations of new homes, believed to bring protection and prosperity. The legacy of the Spirit Stone lived on, not as a singular source of magic, but as a symbol of faith, resilience, and the enduring connection between the Naga people and the land they inhabited. Meanwhile, back in Keiko, Chakhesang and Angami were left to grapple with the aftermath of the stone's destruction. Without the blessings of the Spirit Stone, life became harder for them. The abundance they had once taken for granted was gone, and the rivalry that had driven them to monopolize the stone's power now seemed meaningless. With Sui gone and their mother's decision to destroy the stone weighing heavily on their minds, the two brothers were forced to confront the consequences of their actions. Chakhesang, who had always believed that he was entitled to the stone's power by virtue of being the eldest, now faced the stark reality that his greed had contributed to its downfall. He spent many days in solitude, reflecting on his choices and the harm they had caused. Angami, too, wrestled with feelings of guilt. Though he had always seen himself as more pragmatic than his brother, he could not deny that his desire for control had fueled the conflict that ultimately led to the stone's destruction. In time, the two brothers came to a mutual understanding. The Spirit Stone, once the source of their rivalry, was gone, and with it, the power they had fought over. Without the stone to divide them, they realized that their bond as brothers was more important than any material gain. Slowly, they began to rebuild their relationship, seeking forgiveness from one another and vowing to honor the memory of their family in ways that did not rely on magical blessings. Though the Valley of Keiko no longer drew pilgrims seeking the stone's power, it remained a place of quiet significance. The broken pieces of the Spirit Stone were buried in the earth, a reminder of the stone's past and the lessons it had taught. The valley itself became a place of reflection, where people would come to meditate on the balance between material wealth and spiritual fulfillment. The story of the Spirit Stone was still told, but now it carried a different message, a warning about the dangers of greed and the importance of unity. While Sui's journey and the fate of the Spirit Stone shaped the cultural and spiritual landscape of the Naga people, another legend from the region further deepened their understanding of the balance between the human, animal, and spirit worlds. This is the tale of Mao Fa, a story rooted in the ancient traditions of Mel Village, where the spiritual and physical realms are deeply intertwined. The tale tells of Zilia Muro, a woman of divine origin, whose life and lineage would forever alter the course of humanity. Zilia Muro, revered as the first woman from whom all of mankind is said to have descended, lived a life steeped in mystery and divine intervention. One day, as she rested beneath the sacred branches of a towering bunin tree, a miraculous event occurred. A column of clouds descended from the heavens, surrounding her in a cocoon of mist. In that moment, she conceived, not through any earthly means, but through the divine will of the Creator. From this extraordinary event, Zilia gave birth to 3 beings, a tiger, a spirit, and a man. Each of Zilia's children represented a different aspect of life. The tiger, born first, embodied the raw, untamed power of the animal world. His strength and instincts made him a fearsome force, one who viewed the world through the lens of survival. The spirit, the second child, was a creature of the unseen realms, existing between the physical and spiritual planes. His nature was more elusive, harder to understand, as he moved freely between worlds, influencing the lives of both humans and animals. The youngest, the man, was the most vulnerable of the three, but he possessed qualities that set him apart: compassion, intelligence, and the capacity to grow through connection with others. As the years passed, Zilia's three sons grew into their roles, each one taking turns caring for their aging mother. The tiger, though powerful, was often impatient and callous. On the days when it was his turn to tend to their mother, he would point to different parts of her body and casually remark that he would consume those parts after her death. His words, though spoken lightly, carried a dark edge, reflecting the predatory nature that defined him. Zilia, though saddened by the tiger's attitude, understood that this was his way. He was bound by the laws of the animal kingdom, where survival often came at the expense of others. The spirit, too, struggled to care for Zilia in a meaningful way. Though he had the ability to move between worlds, his presence seemed to drain her of energy, as if his connection to the spirit realm made him too distant to provide the comfort she needed. Zilia's health often worsened when the spirit was near, though he never meant her harm. His ethereal nature made it difficult for him to fully grasp the human experience of pain, illness, and emotional need. It was Man, the youngest, who brought Zilia the most peace. Unlike his brothers, Man was gentle and attentive, caring for their mother with love and tenderness. On the days when it was his turn, Zilia felt at ease, her spirits lifted by his presence. Man, though lacking the raw power of the tiger or the supernatural abilities of the spirit, possessed something far more valuable: empathy. He understood his mother's pain, not just physically, but emotionally, and his care for her went beyond mere duty. It was rooted in deep love and respect, but as Zilia's illness worsened, Man began to fear that her final days would be spent in pain. He couldn't bear the thought of his mother suffering, and so, in a moment of desperation, he concocted a plan. He gathered wild chilies from the forest and boiled them into a soup, believing that the spicy broth would slowly ease her suffering, perhaps even end her life peacefully. To his surprise, however, the soup had the opposite effect. When Zilia tasted the soup, she immediately felt better. The heat from the chilies seemed to revitalize her, and she asked for more. For a time, her health seemed to improve, and Man, relieved, continued to care for her with newfound hope. Man's relief at his mother's brief recovery was short-lived. Despite the apparent revival brought on by the chili soup, Zilia's condition eventually deteriorated once more. As the days passed, it became clear that her time was drawing near. Zilia, wise and accepting of her fate, knew that her sons would need guidance after she was gone. She called Man to her side one last time, imparting to him her final wish, that he bury her beneath the hearth of their home. In Naga tradition, the hearth was the sacred center of the household, symbolizing family unity, warmth, and the continuity of life. To be buried beneath it was a profound honor, signifying that her spirit would remain with the family. Even after her passing, Man, ever dutiful, honored his mother's request with great care. After she passed, he buried her quietly beneath the hearthstone, making sure to replace everything exactly as it had been. He scattered fresh earth in different parts of their home to make it appear as though nothing had changed, concealing the burial site from his brothers. Zilia's final wish had been fulfilled, but her death set in motion a series of events that would further divide the three brothers. When the tiger returned from the forest, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. His mother was nowhere to be found, and the house felt different. He demanded answers from Man, who, though truthful about her passing, refused to reveal the location of her grave. Furious, the tiger roared and began tearing through the house, clawing at the ground and digging frantically in search of their mother's body. He dug in every corner, overturning stones, but he could not find her. In his rage and grief, the tiger overlooked the hearth, never thinking to search beneath the very center of their home. This failure to find Zilia's resting place deepened the divide between the brothers. The tiger, frustrated and angry, grew suspicious of Man, believing that he had hidden their mother's body for selfish reasons. The spirit, though less aggressive, was also troubled by the secrecy surrounding their mother's burial. Despite Man's efforts to honor Zilia's wishes, his brothers began to distrust him, interpreting his actions as deceptive. What had once been a close family was now fragmented by suspicion and misunderstanding. As the tension between the brothers grew, the tiger became increasingly hostile toward man. His instincts, driven by a mixture of grief and jealousy, pushed him to act on his predatory nature. The tiger began to see his younger brother as weak, unworthy of the respect their mother had shown him. Fueled by anger, he plotted to make man his next meal, waiting for the right moment to strike. A man, aware of the danger, took precautions to protect himself. He fashioned a small sleeping space high up in the roof of their home, out of the tiger's reach. Every night, he would climb up to this elevated platform, knowing that it was the only place where he could sleep safely. The tiger, however, was patient. He prowled the house, watching and waiting for an opportunity to catch his brother off guard. One night, while man slept high above, the tiger noticed what he believed to be his brother's reflection in a long, tubular water drum that stood in the corner of the room. Thinking that man had foolishly left himself exposed, the tiger pounced, diving headfirst into the drum. Instead of finding his brother, the tiger was met with a splash of water. The reflection had been a trick of the light, and man awoke to the sound of the tiger floundering in the drum. Realizing that he could not continue to live in constant fear, man knew he had to rid himself of the tiger once and for all. He devised a clever plan, using the tiger's own arrogance against him. The next morning, man approached his brother and casually asked what, if anything, he feared. The tiger, confident in his strength and ferocity, scoffed at the question. "Nothing," he said proudly, "except for the sound of booming thunder. That is the only thing in this world that I cannot withstand." Man took note of this revelation and set his plan into motion. He hollowed out a large gourd and filled it with pebbles, creating a makeshift instrument that would rattle loudly with every movement. Then, while the tiger slept, man carefully tied the gourd to his brother's waist. The pebbles inside the gourd rattled softly as the tiger breathed, but he remained unaware of the trap being set. As dawn broke, man took his bugle, made from the long, hollow stem of a maki plant, and sounded it sharply into the tiger's ear. The sudden, piercing noise jolted the tiger awake. Panicked by the loud sound and the rattling pebbles tied to his waist, the tiger believed that the dreaded thunder had come for him. In a frenzy, he bolted from the house, running as fast as his legs would carry him. With each leap, the gourd tied to his waist clattered and echoed, amplifying the sound of the thunder that he feared so deeply. Terrified and disoriented, the tiger fled deeper and deeper into the dark jungles of the western hills, never to return. His fear of the imaginary thunder drove him far away, where he could no longer pose a threat to man. The tiger's departure marked the end of the brothers' conflict, but it also signaled the permanent separation of the family. The spirit, having witnessed the tiger's flight, quietly decided to leave as well. He, too, felt that there was no place for him among his brothers anymore. With the tiger gone and man safe from harm, the spirit chose to wander south, toward the warm lowland valleys, where it was said that spirits roamed freely. His departure was quiet, almost imperceptible, as he faded into the landscape, leaving man to live alone in the home they had once shared. And so, the three brothers, each representing the animal, the spirit, and the human, went their separate ways. The tiger, driven by fear, disappeared into the western hills. The spirit, bound to his ethereal nature, drifted southward, seeking solace in the unseen realms. Man, the last remaining brother, stayed in the home they had built together, now a place of quiet reflection. Though he had won his battle for survival, the cost had been great. He was left alone, without the family that had once been his strength. The tale of Zilia Moro and her three sons became a foundational legend for the Naga people, a story that encapsulated the delicate balance between the forces of nature, the spiritual world, and human resilience. It served as a reminder that while humans may possess intelligence and compassion, they are still deeply connected to the natural and spiritual realms. The conflict between the brothers, each embodying different aspects of existence, illustrated the dangers of allowing jealousy and fear to dictate one's actions. Over time, the people of Mel Village and the surrounding regions passed down this story, preserving its lessons through oral tradition. The legend became a part of the cultural fabric of the Naga tribes, influencing their beliefs about the interconnectedness of all living things. It was said that families, mindful of the tiger's fate, would bury their loved ones beneath the hearth, just as man had done with Zilia. Though this practice became less common over the years, the symbolic power of the hearth as the center of family life remained strong. Mel Village, where this story originated, sits nestled in the Senapati district of Manipur, about 30 kilometers south of Kohima, the capital of Nagaland. The village, like many in the region, is steeped in ancient traditions, where stories like that of Zilia Muro continue to resonate with the people who call these hills home. The landscape, with its misty mountains and deep forests, provides a fitting backdrop for the legends that have shaped the Naga worldview. For generations, the story of the Spirit Stone and the tale of Zilia Muro have endured, serving as both spiritual guidance and cultural identity. These stories, though born from different villages, reflect the shared values of the Naga people, the importance of family, the need for balance between the human, animal, and spirit worlds, and the consequences of letting greed and fear disrupt the harmony of life. If you've seen the video so far, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and your comment.